Hey, you beautiful people. Welcome back to the program. My name is Dr. Dan. I'm a pharmacist turned weight management specialist, and I hope you guys like the new background here. This is an actual bookshelf now. Previously, it was just a green screen, but we've upgraded it up a little bit. Literally did this all weekend, so I'm pretty pumped, pretty excited about it, and I hope you enjoy the new kind of more interesting background potentially. And today, we're going to talk about sweeteners, probably one of the most controversial topics that are out there because, yes, there is some science that says good, and there is some science that says bad. So I'm going to do my best to decipher that, but before we get started here, don't forget to hit that big subscribe button down below, turn on your notifications so that you're always reminded about my future videos coming out, and leave us a like, leave us a comment with any of your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. So, sweeteners, are they the spawn of the devil, or are they something else that has been overhyped and blown up by the Dr. Google experts of the world? So sweeteners in diet sodas are very interesting because there's a lot of data that has shown the pros, that has shown the cons, and then also just right down in the middle and being neutral. So how do we tell what is real, what is not? And in reality, you need some high level of education to actually properly interpret and to go through the nuances that is found in the evidence. Now, most of the Dr. Google experts out there, unfortunately, don't have the training to understand the nuances and to properly go through the literature. And they're generally coming from a biased perspective and kind of parroting or exaggerating certain aspects of various studies that fit their narrative so they can ultimately sell you a product. Now, fortunately, or perhaps unfortunately, depending how you feel about me, I do have that training. Now, I wouldn't say I'm like a pro at interpreting the evidence, but maybe like semi-pro with like a pretty bad injury or missing a limb, that sort of thing. I did spend about 12 months of my life and approximately $25,000 learning how to properly interpret literature and evidence and then further add to my crippling student debt. Yay for higher education. Now, I'm going to give you guys full transparency. As I always try to do is that, I want to try and mitigate my own biases and personal objections and that sort of thing. And I will tell you that on a daily basis, I drink at least one can of Coke Zero because it's amazing, it's delicious, and I love it. And I probably will do so for the rest of my life. So that is my bias as well. Coca-Cola is the best company in the world. If they ever happen to want to sponsor me and help me pay down my student debt, please let me know. Anyways, let's talk about some science. So what exactly are sweeteners? Well, they are sugar substitutes, and they pretty much do as they are named. They basically sweeten and substitute for sugar. I know this is groundbreaking information, but that's what they do. So the reason why they can be used as 0-calorie sweeteners is because they're about 100 to 500 times sweeter compared to regular sugar. Therefore, we need a whole lot less of them in order to achieve the same level of sweetness that we would attain with sugar. And today they are found in a ton of different products. Everything from your toothpaste, gum, diet soda, you name it, there is a sweetener in it trying to add some flavoring but not adding on the calorie aspect. And some of them have been labeled a little bit more scarier than the other ones just because they've been studied more, have gotten more public attention, yada, yada, yada. Now, most of them have been approved by the FDA to be used as food additives, and I was going to try and pronounce all of these, but if you want to read my blog where I wrote them out, that's probably better for not only you, but also for me in trying not to hurt myself while I try and pronounce big words. I know I did 10 years of education and I still struggle with my vowels and stuff like that. It is what it is. Two of the more common ones that I'm sure you heard of, and I know I can pronounce, is aspartame and sucralose. Now there's a couple other ones there, and one of the ones that isn't approved by the FDA as a food additive is stevia. Now stevia has gotten a lot of attention because it's more thought of as being maybe more organic and more natural and derived from stevia plants and that sort of thing. But what's contained in stevia is what we call stevial glycosides. And as I said, the FDA hasn't approved this one. It's been a little bit more suspicious of it, and that's because it kind of comes in a few different forms. So there's some more crude formulations, which are, made from the leaves, the stevia leaves themselves. And so they're a little bit more crude. They're not as pure as, say, what we would find with aspartame and stuff like that. So the FDA has been a little bit more hesitant to approve them because they haven't really kind of come up with a standardized formulation for stevia itself and the stevial glycosides. But in general, the FDA has recognized that it's likely safe. We just haven't approved it as a food additive yet. Now, as I said, some may think it's more natural, but in reality, it is really quite refined in order to break down the stevia leaves to get the stevial glycosides out of it. And to be quite honest, I'm not a big fan of stevia just because it has a pretty bad aftertaste, kind of like black licorice and coffee combination. And I'm sorry to you if you do enjoy black licorice, and I am also sorry for you, but I don't think we can be friends anymore if you do like black licorice. All right, so now we know what sweeteners are. Are they actually killing us? Are they bad for us, or are they just sweeteners and there's nothing wrong with them? So sweeteners have been claimed to cause cancer, diabetes, altered glucose tolerances, heart disease, cancer, if I haven't mentioned it, like just about every single disease process in the books, sweeteners have been claimed to cause. Now, there has been some animal studies and some observational trials. So observational trials, again, is where we look at a group of individuals, either in the past tense and look at them over a period of time and try to figure out what their sweetener consumption was, or we take a group of people and then we watch them through time and then we try to get them to estimate their sweetener consumption over time as well. So those kinds of trials, what they found is that the aforementioned problems, so heart disease, cancer, and that sort of thing, seem to pop up in these trials. However, these two kinds of trials have a few shortcomings. So in particular, the observational trials. So as I said, they're looking at a group of people, and the researchers always try to do their best to look at confounders. And what confounders are things that are going to throw off the data and cause an altered result. So they try to mitigate and try to remove those confounders so that whatever result you're getting, we can hopefully, with more confidence, say that it's due to the sweetener and not some other kind of factor. However, oftentimes it's challenging to try and mitigate and try to remove all of the confounders. And what we often find from the literature is that a lot of the researchers and stuff didn't quite get all of the confounders. And when we took into other confounders, such as rates of obesity and that sort of thing, the risks that were associated with sweeteners suddenly disappear. So that kind of tells us that, well, was it the sweetener or was it actually due to the fact that a larger proportion of these individuals had obesity, and that's what caused the sweeteners to look bad. And generally in these observational trials, they're usually looking at people that are greater than 40 years old. They have comorbidities such as diabetes, hypertension, obesity, that sort of thing. And a big question that has been remaining is, well, we're looking at this aged population, or this older population that has all these comorbidities. Were they potentially drinking full sugar pop or using full sugar up to a certain point where suddenly they developed things like diabetes, insulin resistance, or some other kind of comorbidity, and then they made the switch to sweetener, but the damage had already been done beforehand. So if the damage is already done beforehand and then they switch to sweetener, well, now sweetener is going to get the bad rap because that's what they're now consuming. So we actually haven't really answered that question up to this point in time, just because we haven't done a long enough or looked far enough back to understand what these individuals were consuming back in the past, whether it's childhood or up through their 30s and 40s and that sort of thing. And we do know that a full sugar diet can increase your risk of various other factors such as heart disease, obesity, diabetes, and that sort of thing. That one is much more clearly defined and pulled out of the literature compared to sweeteners. Ultimately, sweeteners are getting a bad rap for it, and really they maybe should start looking at lawsuits or something like that, and also throw me a percentage for bringing all this information to light. So what about the animal studies? Well, mice and animals are a little bit different than humans. And obviously, Dr. Dan, thank you for the fact of the day. And you are very welcome. So yes, they are animals, they are different than humans, and there is some value to that research, and we can't ignore that data because clearly these animals had issues and stuff like that. But there is difference in terms of our physiology and anatomy and all that kind of stuff that can ultimately affect the outcome that sweeteners are going to have. So we can't ignore the data, but at the same time, when we've taken the similar experiments and we've tried to replicate it in humans, we just haven't seen the same results. And anytime we have seen things like cancer development, in particular, there was one study that looked at mice and rats that was looking at bladder cancer, and all these mice and rats were developing this cancer, but fundamentally humans don't have the same enzymatic process and the same molecular structure and that sort of thing that would lead to the development of bladder cancer in humans. So that kind of throws it as a moot point, and that kind of says, well, it's not replicatable again in humans. Now, the most important piece of looking at this literature would be the interventional trials. So interventional trials are where we basically are controlling everything, and the only variable between the two groups is whether one group gets a sweetener and the other group does not. So we've tried to control, and now we watch and control these individuals and these populations for a period of time. And then we see at the end of that, is there a difference between the group that got the sweetener and the group that didn't get the sweetener? And what we have found is that no, we don't see these results come out. And in fact, there's been some studies that have shown in interventional trials and stuff that sweeteners might actually be beneficial in helping us to manage things like our weight, our blood sugar levels, and that sort of thing. Now, obviously, the type A personalities are going to thrive in this environment, although they may bias the results because of their perfection mindset and their need and want to please everybody. So I suppose they could alter the results as well. Stuff to think about, but hopefully not, and hopefully they're doing their best as the good scientists that they are and trying to remove and mitigate their biases, just like I like to present to you guys to make sure that it's upfront. Here it is. Here's the potential biases. And, you can't necessarily believe everything that I say, but I do my best to provide you the most honest and evidence-based information possible. And of most recently, there's been an interventional trial that just came out in 2021, so just a few weeks ago, and it further added to the evidence that sweeteners likely don't cause any harm. In particular, it looks like sweeteners don't affect your microbiome, which was kind of one area we were a little bit more concerned about. As well, sweeteners don't seem to affect your glucose tolerance levels, so it doesn't affect your ability to metabolize and use glucose and that sort of thing. So yay for science. It was a pretty well done study as well. So more and more, we're seeing more of these interventional trials that are just demonstrating that there isn't a negative effect due to the sweeteners. So I'm not saying you should go and start slamming a six-pack of Diet Pop every single day. We certainly can't ignore the observational data and the animal trials. Like, they are there. They did show some very interesting results, so we can't ignore it. But the higher quality studies that we've done with the interventional studies haven't shown the same results. So the more likely truth is that sweeteners are safe. They may have some benefit. I'm going to go more with just the case of that they're likely safe. They may have benefit in terms of managing weight and glucose levels, which just kind of makes sense because you're just consuming less calories and you're consuming less sugar. Right? So Diet Pop does contain things like carbonic acid, phosphoric acid, and that sort of thing. So being mindful of that because it can affect your teeth and we want to keep your dentist happy as well. But in summary, everybody, continue to be mindful. As with anything in the evidence is continuing to evolve. But as of right now, I would say sweeteners are safe. They're likely not going to cause any harm. They might have some benefit as well. But as I said, be mindful of that. And that's what we're going to talk about for sweeteners today. So if you have any other questions, drop them in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. And of course, as always, hit that subscribe button. I don't know if it's on this side or that side, but hit the subscribe button down below so that you don't miss another episode. And we will talk to you later, you beautiful people.